Hi everyone, it's Catherine and I'm back with Claire. I need to apologise for how shiny and streamy I look because I've hay fever, but I also have wine, so I'll get through it. I'm here with Claire for our latest discussion of the Storm of Swords. We're discussing all the way from Tyrion to Arya 3. Arya just kind of ruined it at the end. Otherwise, it was all twos the whole way through. So that's chapter 12 to chapter 17. And thanks to Claire's obvious and awesome suggestion, you will find links to all of the playlists from all of our discussions in the description bar down below, and also a link to next week's discussion. Next week it's changing. It's going to be 10 p.m. UK time on Friday, the 27th of April. You can click the link down below and set the notification bell and all that jazz. And from now on, I'll always have the next week's stream linked in that video as well. So yeah, all that housekeeping is over and done with. Next Friday, then, we will be discussing Sam 1 to Dany 2. So that'll be chapter 18 to chapter 23. Very excited to see Sam. And yeah, this week, as I said, we've all the twos except for Arya 3. And so we start with Tyrion. And
yes.
How did you get on with this week?
Okay, so I'll just do a quick run through of where we're at in the chapters, just a quick sound bite, just to remind us of what's going on in these chapters and whether or not they can be grouped together. So Tyrion visits Varys' chambers and subsequently Shay. Arya visits the inn at the crossroads, and she also breaks Lem's nose. Cat visits the in-laws. Jon revisits the fist, and he also kind of mentally revisits his vows. And Sansa visits the Godswood to tell Dontos that she's planning to go to Highgarden. So that's where we're at in the story.
Sorry, I was pouring wine. Yeah, that's interesting. So for you, it's all about visits this week, or revisiting places.
Yes.
For me, I felt like this week it was all about you can't help who you love. Or the heart wants the heart wants. With the exception of Tyrion's chapter, because we'll get into it when he gets on with Shay. But yeah, I'm not sure if Tyrion is thinking with his heart that much. So the Tyrion chapter, it was, I feel like this was a bit of a meandering chapter. I don't know about you, but it meandered a little bit for me. I don't know why, but it seemed to cover a lot.
There's a few things that I want to talk about in this chapter. The first thing is just generally trying to get a handle on Varys. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I thought the TV show kind of ruined Varys and Littlefinger's characters for me, because they changed. The actors, don't get me wrong, I think did a brilliant job, and I think they portrayed the characters really well, but I think the story arcs veered off so much that it's kind of difficult. I'm kind of revisiting again in my mind as I'm going through this reread, who are these people and what are their motivations? Why? And with Varys, you get immediately that sense of it's not about, he's very austere, his chambers are very humble. There's something about Varys where some people can recognize him in disguise and some people just cannot see it at all. So it's whether or not there's some kind of magical thing going on with Varys.
Because there's something not right with that austere presentation that he gives. That's the sad, because he clearly has a lot of means, because it costs money to be able to disguise yourself like that. So where does he keep everything? Where does he keep all of these disguises and costumes? I guess like we know from later on that he clearly has some sort of vested interest, whether he's a secret Targaryen or whatever it is he is.
Yeah.
But I think there probably came a point in Varys' life where he realized he could have whatever he wanted financially. He could have whatever he wanted in terms of money. If he wanted to go the Littlefinger path, he could have. But there's something more there. It's more about the power game for him. And I wonder, even with the game he's playing with Illyrio, I wonder, do people look too much into it? For me, I think for for Varys, it's all about the game, and eventually, when it comes to even Illyrio, he might end up betraying Illyrio if it means another kind of twist that he can take.
It is difficult to see where his loyalties lie, isn't it? I mean, there does seem to be this long-standing relationship with Illyrio that goes way back to when they were both boys in Pentos, was it? And they share this history and this background, which kind of, it's like, you know, brothers in arms kind of thing. Is there a loyalty there? It wouldn't surprise me if he betrayed Illyrio later on down the line.
Because there's something wrong. I mean, even the way he talks to Tyrion, he's surprised to see Tyrion or whatever. Really? I don't think.
No.
There's very little. Potentially, the only thing that has surprised him to this point is Ned's execution, right? Maybe not even that. But it feels like nothing could really surprise him. That this is a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a cop out. But also, he's getting between Tywin and Tyrion here. There's no masking that, and I'd say even Tywin probably knows that, or maybe he doesn't. I don't know. It's very like, what's the point? If only just to keep them distracted. You know, he wants to keep Tywin and Tyrion at each other's throats because it will lead to this big conflict, and it does lead to a massive conflict. But yeah, as you said, I just don't know where his loyalties are. I mean, this is a man who abuses and uses children more than anyone else in the series. And
I do think that there is, I mean, they are kind of, I think a lot of people put Varys and Littlefinger in the same circle of, they're both schemers, they've both got an agenda, whether it's their agenda or they're working for somebody else. I mean, it feels as though it's this is their work and it's their plan, whatever the plan is. And it kind of feels as though, again, I think most people would feel that Littlefinger sits on the bad guy end of that spectrum and Varys sits on the good guy end of the spectrum. But they, you know, they're both schemers with the agenda. But sometimes when you think about it, like you say, he's a bit of a shit, really, Varys.
Yeah.
I mean, despite his horrible backstory, and he's, you know, he can spin a tale, and he can certainly, you know, he's got an interesting backstory himself, or what he leads other people to believe. I just can't get a grip on him. He's like water. He's like vapor. I can't quite get a grip.
And I don't know if we ever will. I wonder, will he be the character we'll never fully know?
I mean, even though this is a Tyrion chapter, there's two big things that come out of this for me, which is the who is Varys, why, and all these why questions for Varys, but also who is Shae.
Yeah, big time.
And it kind of feels as though there's stuff going on in this chapter that Tyrion's not aware of. We're just kind of coasting through it through his eyes, but there are other things going on. Interestingly,
just to say hello to Johnny Be Crazy. I am Throne and the UK Dark Knight. Ian says Varys is a Star Trek changeling. Confirmed.
Yes.
And the UK Dark Knight loves hearing our views and is reading along with our chapters to keep up. Thank you very much. And make sure you pop any comments or questions or anything, you know, in the comments that you want us to discuss in particular. But yeah, so you were saying about Shae. Sorry, Claire.
No, it was just to say there is another podcast, Order of the Green Hand. I don't know if anybody listens to them. They're pretty, to me, they come across as quite tinfoil, but pretty well researched tinfoil. And some of the ideas are fairly credible. And they've done a recent video series on Doran Martell. And one of the most recent ones, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it's about, it kind of links to who Shae might be and whether or not she could potentially be a sand snake. And if you read this chapter, having listened to their video beforehand, it really does, to me, confirm that, well, she may or may not be a sand snake, but certainly I don't think Shae is who we're led to believe she is through Tyrion's eyes. There's loads of questions that I've got here about whether or not she was, it kind of feels as though she was trying to get pregnant. during that encounter. Like, she jumped on top of him, and it was like, you know, I mean, he was up for it, so I wouldn't say it was sexual assault, but I mean, she was quite aggressive, and it you know, I just like, it's almost feels to me as though she was possibly trying to get pregnant.
That's actually an interesting point, because she is with Lawless at the moment. So
yeah. I just want to throw in as well that the number 1,000 came up again in this chapter, when Shay was talking about the wedding and the wedding guests, and apparently there's going to be 1,000 guests. But yeah, it's a funny one.
The Shay thing, there was a couple of things that I thought were really well done. I mean, she gives him something, not just sex, because he always gets sex, and he'll still break up with her, sex or no sex. But she gives him information he's been looking for from her for a while, which is, how does she get into the room?
Yeah.
And she says it's under the bed. And he realized that's, you know, whatever, I can't remember how he described it. So it's a stone bed, but it's actually there's a false floor.
Yeah, it's like a swing mechanism.
Yeah.
It's like a counterweight.
Counterweight, that's it. And it just, I mean, if Tyrion really loved her, he'd tell her to leave for good, right? I mean, he obviously doesn't love her. I just, if it was me, and my prostitute, I would tell her to leave, okay?
Yeah,
if I really loved her.
He's not thinking with his head, though, is he? He's not making rational decisions.
He's not thinking with his heart either, though. Like, I think she's well able to play him. She goes straight for his scar. She knows that he's got very low self-esteem, and she knows that where he is psychologically, and instantly can track that in. Like, she's very good at reading men. But I don't think he loves her. And, you know, I mean, the only thing I would say that kind of goes against that is the fact that he does want to get rid of the singer, because he doesn't trust the singer. But I think maybe that's to cover himself as well as her. It is interesting that she's definitely playing him because she wants more money. Like, she wants her dresses back. She wants all the money, basically. And yeah, just that thing with the bed as well, the fact that it's made of rock or whatever, kind of, there's a lot of symbolism there, I feel. You know, it's like it's almost like a tombstone or something. The idea that he's basically making her grave and his grave potentially by not breaking this off.
Well, this is what I get from this chapter, and just from what we're talking about here, is I think there may be a connection between Varys and Shay. I think either he knows who she really is, or they're working in tandem, or she's working for him. I think they both know what each other are up to. And the reason that I say this is because Varys wasn't keen on Shay being hanged if they were caught with all this, like, you know, using his bedroom. And also Shay seems to be able to know what Varys is doing, where he's coming and going, and she seems to be able to recognize that it's him through his disguises, even though Tyrion's like, what? It's like some kind of magical thing for Tyrion. It's like there's a glamour there that Shay can see through somehow. So I think there may be a connection between them. I think throughout this chapter, what's interesting is Tyrion making decisions about who he trusts and who he doesn't trust. And I think he's way off. I think he's not being observant, as we can see as readers, that there are all sorts of other things going on here, like the fact that Tyrion thinks they're having this conversation about Cersei and the Kettle Blacks, and that Cersei's got this promise of that she's dangling this carrot in front of the Kettle Blacks of this inexhaustible purse, which is just hilarious and hideous all at the same time. That concept, and like, you know, dropping a shoulder every now and again and being all like, you know, you never know. So, but and Tyrion's thinking about that in the context of Cersei and like, oh, I've got the measure of her. I understand. It's like, the exact same thing is probably happening to you, Tyrion, right now, and you're not seeing any of this. You're worrying more about a singer that has got nothing to do with any of this and isn't particularly that much of a threat. I mean, there's other things about songs and singers and the significance of songs and you know, but I think in this context, this chapter to me is saying that even the dialogue, the way that Shay is saying Simon says, Simon says, Simon says, and it's like he's so fixated on that, and it's like, what about what everybody else is saying and doing around you? I think he's missing things, and I think potentially we're being led down that road as readers as well. So that's why this chapter's interesting to me.
Well, yeah, and we've already been presented with 3 different singers. Well, by the time we get to the next chapter, we'll have had 4 different singers through Mance, the singer with Sansa and the Tyrells, and then we'll have Tom of Sevens in the next chapter. So yeah, it is hard to know. I mean, it isn't the worst thing in the world, I guess, to at least be suspicious of him. But AU is in the chat and he wants to know, Claire, can you explain drooping the shoulder?
Yeah, you know, it's showing a bit of shoulder and flicking the hair and batting the eyelid. You know,
Shoulders are sexy, right?
It's that hint of a promise of kind of maybe, and that's what she's doing with the Kettle Blacks. But again, that's exactly what Shay is doing with Tyrion. Yeah, my giant of Lannister. He's very vain, Tyrion. Even with all his injuries and everything, he's just obsessed with. He's really got that Lannister vanity.
I mean, it is ironic that somebody who's so greedy for money and something that Tyrion relies on to get by in life, you know, other people's greed.
Yeah.
That's going to be the thing that takes him down. You know, the thing he relies on is the thing that'll take him down. And it'll be the same with Bran, no doubt.
There's something in this chapter that's just fleeting over, and it made me pause and think, again, who are these people? When Varys mentions that the Citadel has restored Pycelle, like only the Citadel can restore Pycelle to his position, or remove him, or restore him to, or replace him, indeed. And they talk about the conclave at the Citadel, and I just thought, who's that? Who are these people? Who are these people in the Citadel that can direct what's? I mean, you know, he's the Grand Maester, so there's a link there. But it just makes me think: is there anybody potentially sitting on this conclave that we don't know about?
He is the Grand Maester, but is he just a figurehead? Like, he's not like the Pope, say, where there is quite a lot of power.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be someone at the Citadel who decides who's in charge in King's Landing, or is it like a group of people at the Citadel? Is that the conclave? Like, it seems to me that if you're going to have, it makes sense to have the most powerful person nearest your king, but that wouldn't have happened, say, with Rome and Catholicism.
It sounds very Roman Catholic, doesn't it? Citadel and conclave. It sounds very Catholic.
The Citadel, but then the Grand Maester should be in the Citadel, right? If it's Roman Catholic, it's very Church of England to have, you know, the head of the church with the monarch.
Yeah,
you know, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Is that the head? Well, not the head of the church, but the next head down, I guess. But Ian says, with Marwyn gone, that will impact conclave decisions, possibly. I mean, that's definitely something that I would love to know more about after, hopefully, in Winds. I'd love to know more about the Maesters. Correct, anyone, the Maesters in King's Landing, yeah. And how many Maesters should there be?
So I wonder if Marwyn was part of the conclave.
Could be.
I'm just interested to know who they. You know, it was just something that was mentioned very briefly that just made me think, that's interesting. Who sits on this in this group of people who make these decisions?
Because you'd have to have more than just you'd have to have quite a lot of Maesters in King's Landing. Like, if if your maester is your doctor or your spiritual leader or whatever, you have to have quite a lot where there's population density in large houses.
Mm-hmm.
You know. AU says he will use glass candles in his decision, and the conclave is the archmaester. I need to learn a little bit more about the maesters. I need to do a bit more research. Thanks.
What did you think? What did you think about Tyrion's fleeting interaction with Loras?
Oh God, yeah, that was weird. Loras had a lovely line about something about
when the sun has set, no candle can replace it.
Yeah, so romantic.
So
he
romantic.
Write Mills and Boone. Maybe that's what he's doing.
Tender 17-year-old who's had his heart crushed. But yes, it was. I mean, you can see this is where the whole, because it was never, again, it was forced down your throat on the TV show, but there was always just a kind of fleeting hint of it in the books. Because we never had a point of view from Renly or Loras, but it's, wow, this is like pretty powerful love stuff going on here.
Well, even then, like, I mean, really the only thing I guess that modern readers would connect with is the Rainbow Guard. Like, I don't know, like, I think, yeah, you see, I saw the first 2 series before I started reading the books. So it seems obvious when you're reading it now, but I don't know if it would have been that obvious. I'm not sure.
And there's this whole thing that just makes me think about third sons. So we get, you know, there's a theme around second sons, and you know, you get the heir to a house or a castle or whatever, and obviously they're the firstborn, and then you've got the second sons, and there's even a sellsword company called the Second Sons, and then you've got the third sons. And Loras says that it's not, when Tyrion questions him about why did you join the Kingsguard, what was your reason for joining so young at 17, don't you know what you're giving up? And Loras says it's not necessary for a third son to wed or breed, which sounds very kind of animalistic, I suppose, doesn't it? But it just made me think about other third sons, and I'm, you know, Benjen leaving for the Night's Watch, and what would the reason be? And was it because it was just there isn't a reason for him to wed or breed? I mean, usually they'd find an appropriate match from a lesser house, maybe. But yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting. Loras's position as third son, and also, you know, he's heartbroken.
Waymar Rice.
Yeah, he was another third son, wasn't he?
Yeah. But yeah, it's a bit of a, I don't know. I get annoyed with Tyrion from this point out. I'm going to be annoyed with Tyrion for a little while, I think.
I think just going back to Shay for a second, I think there is something there about, it's not just that she's interested in money and nice clothes and jewels. She's desperate to be at that wedding. Like, there's a reason for her to be there. She has to be at that wedding. And again, that just makes me think, who is she? Who's she reporting to? What's going on here? Because targeting somebody like Tyrion would be a good move for an adversary. So, you know, is it the Martells? Could she be working with or for Varys? It's interesting. Yeah, she's so desperate. She's so desperate to be at the wedding. It's almost like she'll do anything. She's not afraid of anyone. She just wants to be there at the wedding. I
mean, potentially, I'll get onto this in Sansa's chapter. Potentially, she's not just working for Tywin and Varys. She could have her, you know, the iron in many fires. You know, many irons in the fire. That's what I meant. Ian said, considering how easily people die in Westeros, shouldn't all sons and daughters be expected to have many and more kids?
Yeah, I mean, so they're not expected to have children or marry if you're a third. So I mean, that opens up lots of potential for you to be an adventurer, for you to go off and search for an ancestral sword.
I mean, it's historically accurate though. in Ireland, the mortality rate up until like 1940s, it was one in every two children born would die in infancy or childhood. It was really, really low. And yet, to have a son or a daughter become a nun or a priest was like such a huge honor. I mean, it did trump going on to have kids, and maybe it's to do with the fact that the life expectancy is so low, because there is a certain respect and like high, social kudos, I guess, for having a child, in a role of honor. So it does bring a lot, no matter where your family is on the and even like, like I know people that wanted to be nuns even back in the 70s and 80s, and they were told they were too poor to be nuns. Like now they wouldn't, but like it was such a like even then it was such a high status. So it's probably a similar kind of effect with the maesters and the King's Guard, and even potentially the Night's Watch as well. To have, and then it also avoids any potential embarrassment. They're not going to go off and have bastards.
Yes.
So
they've taken a vow. Yeah.
And it's somebody else's issue, even if they do, But so AU says maybe Shay wanted to see Tywin at the wedding.
Yeah, maybe.
So, do you think, so before we move on, do you think she's already working with Tywin?
I think either she's working with Tywin or she's there watching Tywin for somebody else.
So I think I think there's something going on with the Bran, Varys, Shay trio, whether Tywin knows it or not, whether the three of them, either there's a twosome in there or inadvertently they find themselves working together to try and drive wedges between these Lannisters, and get distractions going, or just get money out of them, whatever it is.
Or to be in a position to be able to influence one of them, like Shay with Tyrion.
I mean, look at you're definitely right. The Martells, the the Targaryens, and the Reynes. There's theories about those three characters. If you want to be tinfoil about all of those three characters, they all have very good reasons for driving wedges among the family. But so anything else on Tyrion then?
No. We've got Arya next.
So Arya, first of two Arya chapters, and this is where we meet the King's Men. We meet Lemon Cloak. Do you say Angai? I say Angai, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Thomas Sevens and a few other characters, but these are the characters that we first meet as she's going down the road, and it just starts off so heavy, this chapter, she instantly just feels, oh no, we're going to be caught. And then of course she ends up going to the inn at the Kneeling Man. Is that what it's called?
Yes,
the Inn of the Kneeling Man, where Jaime and Brienne had just been. So if Jaime and Brienne had taken the road they told them to take, would they have run into Lemon Cloak and three boys, basically?
Probably, yeah. There's a lot of near misses going on, certainly.
And I don't think Brienne and Jaime would have had a hope there, because they've got an archer, and quite a skilled archer to. So what do you guys think in the chat? Do you think Brienne and Jaime and Cleos would have taken this threesome? Because I'm guessing not.
No.
But they probably would have. It would have been interesting. I wonder, did he toy with the idea of them potentially taking Jaime as a hostage? But then you can't kill Brienne, so.
It would have been interesting. It would have been interesting, because I think they would have overpowered them. Definitely, the brothers without banners would have won that fight.
I think so. With Jaime tied up, especially, and Cleos instantly dead.
Yeah.
But anyway, that isn't what happened. Hot Pie and Gendry and Arya meet them, and I love the image of the sword dragging behind Arya as well.
Yeah.
She's such a kid.
Yeah.
And when she meets Harwin in this chapter, like
And
she
yeah,
just
it's
instantly,
heartbreaking.
she
Yeah.
has to trust him. And I'm Arya underfoot, and it's just heartbreaking what happens then as we go into chapter 3. But
Well,
anyway, I'm
yeah,
jumping ahead.
she
So
changes her mind quite quickly, doesn't she? But
yeah,
yeah, I think there's a couple of observations here. First one is about just what I mentioned briefly previously with Simon the singer, is that there definitely seems to be something about the power of song. And we hear the lyrics, and and again, that sense of like she hears the singer singing before anything else. And it's that like alarm call, but also the lyrics as well in the song, but the significance of singers as well as just the songs that they're singing, but the significance of the singers and the messages. And again, that obviously, in the stories and the history and the legends, and that links back to the recent chapters that we've had with Jon and Mance. I think that it's interesting to note that Arya does miss Needle. She thinks about Needle, and she thinks about the North, and she pleads to the old gods. I think it's interesting that when she notices Lem, the guy in the yellow cloak, that she notices that he has the look of a soldier, because I think he is somebody probably quite significant. I think he's a knight of significance. I don't know who, but I think he's somebody significant. I thought it was quite sad when Gendry was referring to King Robert, when they were talking about King Robert and the King's men, and Gendry said, "That old drunk, he's dead." Obviously referring to his father. Yeah, this is I haven't really got a great deal of this I haven't got many notes for this chapter. It's interesting that I thought it was funny that Arya breaks Lem's nose.
yeah. It is
yeah.
funny that like I definitely have more for the next chapter. I did when I saw Harwin again. There is a theory out there that Harwin is the hooded man.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So next the last time we see Harwin, like I think it's in Feast. He pulls Kat's, or he's the one who asks for Kat to be resurrected,
Right.
by Beric, and then later on, the hooded man knows Theon, but going into chapter 3, and even here, we know that we find out that he's a good rider, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, potential there. I'll be watching out for more evidence of that as we learn a little bit more about him. The only other thing I had, they take her horses, and they say that they'll owe her, and it's just like she just feels so hard done by. Again, she tries to assume a new identity here as well, but she gives way to Arya Stark. A squab is what she wants.
Yeah.
She gives way to Arya Stark, and they say they'll owe her. They give her an IOU. And I just wonder, will they come back, or is it going to be Lady Stoneheart? Is that the IOU? That it's the resurrection of Stoneheart. That's the IOU paid. AU says Lem was Rhaegar's squire.
Oh well, now that would be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked into Lemon Cloak that much. I
wonder if I can't remember if anything in the story so far, if anybody knows if something happens to Lem, or is he still around in the story, because it'd be interesting to see if he ever runs into Connington, John Connington, like later on in the next book.
I'm very interested in the King's Men, which I can't stop thinking of the movie then. But they're still King Robert's men. They're not Joffrey's for sure. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about them when we get into 3, I think, will we?
Yeah.
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 Let's move on to the most frustrating chapter in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
And the chapter that completely banishes any notions that Rob would have made a good leader.
Yes.
I think there's two big errors in this for me. Three, actually. Three big errors. So obviously the marrying of Jane Westerling,
Mm-hmm.
keeping Greywind at bay,
Mm.
and then savaging Edmure for not holding Riverrun.
That was a
But
shitty thing to do, I think.
why
Yeah.
not? I still don't understand that decision not to tell him that that was the plan. How can he can't act in a void like of knowledge. Like why keep him out of that? So anyway, I feel like there's a few things here with Rob, and it seems to be stemming from I have to say at the Jane Westerling thing, I would lay a Cat's door. I think if Cat hadn't treated Jon Snow so badly all of Rob's life, Jon would have gone, right, that's a bastard with Jane. I'll just have to move on. My dad survived it, I'll survive it, but I have a pact with the phrase, I have to honor it.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think if Cat had treated Jon a bit better, Rob wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of this works well. Again, we have the return of the Cat and Jon back-to-back chapters that we got used to in Game of Thrones. Again, we have them here, just where we get the effect that relationship had on the decision-making process in now the three of their lives, in Rob, Cat, and Jon's lives. But Rob is just, I mean, in this chapter, he reminds her of Brandon. He reminds her of Ned, and he reminds me of Robert Baratheon, but I wish he was a bit more Robert Baratheon, and just like any potential child that came from Jane Westerling could have just been an Edric Storm type thing. But at the same time, I mean, he brings I know it's a terrible thing to say, but for this time, this doesn't bring anything to the table. AU says he couldn't tell Edmure without going through someone else. Too dangerous. Follow orders. I still think Edmure. He's definitely trying to shift blame.
Barbara, I completely agree that Blackfish was just as bad as Rob towards poor Edmure. Completely. Why was Blackfish siding with Rob in any of this, actually?
And I agree that there's military. I totally agree that there's military precedent here and all the rest. But send somebody you trust to Edmure. I just don't.
Edmure's the patsy in this situation.
What Rob has done is way worse. Way worse. Because Edmure was acting like, okay, he didn't follow orders, but he wasn't acting with the full information. It's not a good command. Isn't there something that you have to send a good command? Like the general needs to send a clear and understandable commands. I don't know if holding Riverrun that's all it said, hold Riverrun. It doesn't say don't leave Riverrun.
Poor Edmure at the end of this chapter, pleading to make amends. He's accepting it, and then he's pleading to make amends. This whole thing feels like it's been engineered and manufactured. This chapter feels like one of those old BBC would play for today's, like a little mini saga within a saga. And I think just the key players in this chapter, Cat, I am ripping my hair out with Cat. The fact that she is so pompous. I mean, probably this is where this elevated sense of I'm the king, I can do whatever the fuck I want probably comes from Rob, is that she immediately thinks her children, well, it doesn't matter what I've done because my children will forgive me. My children will forgive me. And it's like, Cat, Jesus Christ. And then the fact that she basically tells Karstark, your kids aren't worth mine. In front of everybody. It just no wonder he wants vengeance and he's calling Cat a traitor and he goes off to do what he goes off to do. you can see the seeds of all of this being planted here in this chapter. That I feel that you can already see a split between the Northern Lords and the Riverland Lords. I think you can already start to sense this unease between the Northerners and the Riverlands. And even when they're calling for him, calling his name, Rob, who's bearing in mind he's 16 at this point, and they're screaming for him, King of the North, King of the North. And then it's like, and the Trident, and the Trident. And it's like there's two warring factions bubbling under the surface here.
And by the way, the Trident and all the River Lords, their lands are being decimated.
Yes.
I mean, let's remember, Edmure goes out because
he's a hero in this sense, I think.
Well, Edmure goes out, regardless of what Rob said. By the way, none of Rob's people are dying in the north. Nobody's attacking the north. Edmure goes out to stop Lannisters from pillaging and raping the people. Because, I mean, I completely get it. Hold Riverrun. But it never says don't leave. It never says stand idly by while your people are being attacked.
Well, what does defending actually mean?
It doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not clear. It's not clear. I feel it's not clear. It's not clear enough. And it's just to shift blame. And as you said, Cat. But in fairness to Cat, let's play the in fairness to Cat part of this chapter, because there's always part of that to Cat's chapters. In fairness to Cat, this is the first time someone has stood up to Rob in a long time. How, with the Manderleys, with Blackfish was with him, right? How did they let a 15-year-old get into a position where he finds out his two brothers have been killed? He's now the last surviving son of his father's family. And he's had the same nurse who can, by the way, Lannister loyal. How do they get him into a position where he can A, sleep with her? Fair enough, that might happen. B, marry her? Where were they? Why did they let this happen? Nobody, this should not have happened. It shouldn't have happened.
Just some basic stuff like they are.
That wouldn't have happened if Cat had been with him.
No, that's true. And they but even in this chapter, going back again to my position on Cat, I think you're right. I don't think that would have happened if she'd have been there in the thick of it. But even in this chapter, when they're introduced, and she thinks to herself, "Oh, yeah, I know who they are now. They're loyal to the Lannisters." And in her mind, it feels like everybody in this chapter is thinking, "Oh, they're now on our side, isn't it great?" And it's like, is nobody suspicious at all about how this situation has ended up manifesting itself without anyone stopping them, or without somebody saying, hang on a minute, aren't they? It's just so obvious. But all Cat can think about is, oh my God, he's too young to get married. Shit, he's pledged to a fray already. Oh my God, what have you done? And she just goes down that road. So they just seem to they just seem to slide in, the Westerlings and the Spicers.
By the way, the Westerlings, worst house sigil ever. That is never going to be the sigil of a house that's strong.
Yeah.
6 seashells or something, right?
Yeah.
And the Spicers, I mean, Greywind's like, that's the biggest thing for Cat.
Yeah.
Greywind
doesn't like the smell.
Why is she there? Ian says this feeds the theory that all Tullys are at least somewhat touched.
Yeah.
Not just Lysa, e.g. Rob. Yeah, I just think he's 15. I know that's a bit older in this world, but I mean, of course he's going to sleep with somebody if he can. And I still think he's a 15-year-old king. Joffrey wouldn't be allowed to get away with that. Why was Rob allowed to get away with that? Joffrey wouldn't have to marry somebody just because he sleeps with them.
Just the impact, the obvious impact of losing 50,000. 4,000 Freys were lost as part of this decision.
And not to mention all of the Freys that died for Rob to this point. Yeah. It's really like they I don't know how many multiple of numbers that the Westerling brings have already died for Rob. But
so maybe the phrase will be reasonable. Maybe no. You'll see how unreasonable the phrase are.
No. I think as well, when she sees the 40 Frey men leave, trampling the Stark sigil as she's going out, that's anger. That's not going to. They're not going to get over that.
No.
And even no matter what Frey Senior says, they all hate him. I mean, this isn't a slight to him. This is a slight to every generation below him. It could have been one of their daughters that Rob married. Like this, it's really personal. It's not like there's that much removed. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not like it wasn't going to be anyone. It could have been one of their daughters. It's very it's not good. So Edmure got ruined by. Oh, sorry. Barbara says, "I'm not fond of the Tullys, except Edmure." And Ian says, "Edmure got ruined by Outlander. Now I can see Edmure again. I see the Outlander characters." I do have to say though, that Edmure Jaime scene in the last season. I know when we did our House Polished, one of my favorite scenes. He is a phenomenally good actor. The guy that plays Edmure. Absolutely brilliant. So
Grey Wind. Grey Wind is a real worry in this situation, because not only is it about him physically being removed from the situation, but there's this feeling of him starting to be demonized now as this monster. Like even Rob is like, did you see how vicious and violent Grey Wind was in the battle, and he's now got the scent of blood and he's a vicious, and it's like, where's this coming from? This used to be, your spirit animal, and the direwolves for the Stark children, and this kind of symbiotic relationship they've got. And all of a sudden now Rob is kind of pushing this idea away, and like, I'm not the wild wolf, and he's completely being manipulated by Tywin, like completely.
So do you think that he's losing a bit of his starkness because he doesn't have the wolf nearby?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, because I feel like they don't make good decisions when they're separated from the wolves, which is so you think the Westerlings are being played? They're playing with Tywin at this stage.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, completely. They've been. Tywin's looked at this and thought, right, this isn't about. This is a boy king who can. Where are the weak points here? Well, you've got swords and you've got hearts, and he's basically. It might be that Rob is unbeatable in the field. Who knows? It might be that his forces are just this magnificent military force. He seems to be pretty successful. But where you can get him, where you can get in there and ruin his campaign, is by playing with hearts, and this is exactly what's happening here. And it mirrors things that have happened, things that have happened before in the past, and all this stuff about we follow our hearts, don't we, mother? My mistake was probably just as bad as yours, kind of. It's in this whole shitstorm here that's happening in this chapter. Somebody's got to be blamed for it. Whatever way you look at it, all the different computations and manipulations and different characters, the whole saga, somebody at the end of this chapter is going to have to be the fall guy, the patsy, the person who you're pointing the finger at and blaming for all of this. And unfortunately, they've engineered it into a situation where Edmure is pleading to be that person to make amends, and it's just disgusting. I think the whole thing just makes me think, ugh.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think he deserves it, and you can see why people don't like the Starks. In this world, you can see why people don't like the Starks and don't particularly like the Tullys. You can easily see why. Like, we get a very tainted view of them, but it doesn't make for the annoying thing about it is I wouldn't totally blame Rob for this. Rob has very experienced men around him, and none of them are giving good advice.
No,
They should have known, but they know what who Edmure is. They know he likes a bit of glory. Saying hold River Run is not good enough. That isn't a good enough command. No. And they know what he's like. They need to be way more. There had to have been another way.
And his father's there taking his last few breaths, and Edmure's going to want to carve out a position for himself as I am the good Lord of Riverrun, and I will protect my people. And it's horrible, I think, what happens here.
Hi, Lisa. Lisa Hendy is here.
Hi, Lisa. If Edmure ends up being the Valonqar, the little brother of Vengeance, then I would be quite happy, to be honest. Speaking of vengeance, so at the very end of this chapter, Kat's talking to Rob about defend Winterfell or you are no king. So, like you said at the beginning of this chapter, this is the chapter where it's like, yeah, Rob, you're never going to be a good king. It's just all falling apart for him.
I don't understand, like, it's like the Riverlands has really gone through a lot at this stage. And I mean, I'm sure there's quite a number of people in the Riverlands going, why don't you just bugger back to the north? And just, leave. We'll just deal whatever Tywin brings now at this stage. Like this isn't like going. If this is what you're gonna do. Barbara asks, do you think the Karstarks would have left Rob if Rob hadn't beheaded Rickard? I mean, they're very angry. I don't know. I kind of feel it wouldn't have been long before Rob did something else. Or somebody did something else.
I think it depends.
There's very poor management here.
It depends on when they would. I think they could have made that decision at any point leading up to the Red Wedding, actually. But certainly in this chapter, you see, I mean, that's just horrifying that Cat turned around and basically says your kids are worth shit compared to mine. That kind of stuff runs deep, and I can understand I'm surprised that the Karstarks haven't started already plotting against the Starks. I mean, there's a bit of a contentious history between them anyway.
But it sounds like they're doing, like, okay, they kind of pull Edmure over the coals, in private at least, or whatever. But it sounds like it doesn't take much to get into this court. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sound very secure. Like when Davos shows up at Dragonstone, he's Davos. Like everybody should know this guy. I know people have been killed or whatever, but it's hard for him to get in. And yet it doesn't take much for you to manipulate your way into Rob's court. No. And at this stage, there should have been somebody. It just shows their lack of experience at that level, I think. That they're just not used to being around royalty and what it takes to keep it airtight. And you just don't let in anyone. You have to be very choosy. Even Walder Frey was a bit more choosy about who he let in to his court. So it's, I don't know. I think that the Karstarks, I don't think it would have taken a whole lot more for them to be gone back home. I mean, winter is coming, and they're not going to want to be defending the Riverlands for much longer, I don't think. So, so that's Cat. Very frustrating. I mean, from here on out, they're done.
Yeah. Just this decision,
no it's done.
And the impact is much more than just we've lost some phrase. It just ripples through everything, and it's just you're done. That's it.
In fact, if I had been a Karstark, what I would have done if they were really loyal to Rob, really loyal, I would have slit Jane Westerling's throat. And that is the best way. I know it sounds terrible. That's the best way to keep this thing on the rails.
Yes.
But it is, and I'm surprised
Yeah.
nobody did.
Yeah.
So
How?
that'll tell you how little, but it does tell you how little loyalty there is. Like, you know,
that would have been that would have changed everything.
because later on, you know, they people take out women all the time in this world. So, you know, I'm surprised. It just shows you how little trust they had in Rob.
Yeah.
That even if they had done that, he may not have honored that Frey pact. So I'm surprised. I'm surprised somebody didn't try to kill her. I mean, after all, the Westerlings are
feeling
not
of
Lannister.
like, we can smooth it over with the phrase, it'll be okay, it'll be fine, and
whatever you
just
think
so
about
naive.
the phrase, it's so insulting. It's like how many of their men have died. It's horrendously insulting. And whatever, like, you know, the phrase are, you know, enemy number one, and rightly so for what they do, but this is really bad. This is really, really bad what Rob has done. And I don't know if he had to take a sacred oath, like a sacred betrothal engagement to Frey, to marry Frey. I don't think he's actually tied to any one particular Frey girl yet.
No, he was supposed to just take his pick, wasn't he?
Yeah, but this isn't good. It's not good at all. And so Barbara, in a long rounded way, they could have killed Jane. But no, I don't think it would have taken much more for people to run north.
I'm shocked.
I'm right though. I mean,
You're right.
Like, you know, people do all sorts of mad things.
I'm shocked and a little bit scared.
Yeah, viciously killing an innocent. I know, Aim. No, I'm not killing them. If I was a car star, I would. Especially after they behead Rickard.
That's true. Yeah.
No, but just what you're saying about Kat, I mean, what she says about their kids, like, it's just
how dare you, and how just that you're a lesser house, get out of my way, do you know who I am? You know, and I've made a bit of a mess of things for a reason, and you know, my son will forgive me, everything will be fine. It's just a shit show, this chapter, and poor Edmure at the end of it.
By the way,
like you say, that's it.
I wouldn't put it past Kat to have at least Stoneheart. You can see more of Stoneheart creeping into Kat all the time, by the way.
All that remains is vengeance. That's what she says about Winterfell.
I mean,
all that remains.
It's it's not good. It's not good. I am genuinely surprised somebody. It does show you the level of the lack of confidence, I should say, in Rob. That somebody doesn't go at some stage. Can we like at least remove Jane Westerling out of the picture? Can we just like push the Westerlings on a boat and send them somewhere? Like, this is really bad. This is really, really bad. This isn't good for the Riverlands. It's not good for the North. So I don't know. Sorry.
I'm still intrigued.
I'm being medieval.
I'm still intrigued about what Hoster wants to be forgiven for, because his mumblings seem to have now been reduced to just two words, which is, well, two phrases, Tansy and forgive me. So it's just, you know, what is this specific thing that Hoster needs to be forgiven for? I'll be fascinated if we ever find out the answer to that question.
So just a quick question. Does Jane get pregnant before they get married, or does she get pregnant after they get married? Because I don't know. Maybe somebody in the chat knows.
I think it's after. Already? She could be. She could be. I mean, Kat notices her childbearing hips, doesn't she?
Yes, she does.
Yeah. I'm not sure at what point she's pregnant.
It's so pathetic as well. Just all these people. She doesn't know who these people are standing around her son, and it's like, oh God. It's not good.
Yeah.
And we go from definitely the most frustrating chapter in the series potentially. Is there anybody any nominations for a more frustrating chapter? I think this is it. To probably the most joyful chapter we've had in a long time.
Yes.
And definitely my favorite for this week, and that's Jon 2.
Yeah.
And it opens with Tormund saying, "Big enough for you."
I love Tormund. He's so, I forget how funny he is in the book. I mean, my favorite line that he comes out with in this chapter is, well, it's about marrying. Where is it? Yeah, in the South, must every man marry a girl he beds? Because that completely echoes the previous chapter, as in, you know, what a ridiculous idea, actually, when you think about it. Do you have to do that in the South? Really? You have to marry everyone that you sleep with? How ridiculous is that? And it's like, yeah, actually it is, Tormund. And that's exactly what we were talking about previously. It's stupid.
Also, can I just say, in this chapter as well, I mean, Ygritte is the one who's really like forceful with Jon. I mean, the idea, like, do you have to marry everyone you bed? But like, I mean, the women in this chapter and the last chapter, they're the ones that are doing the bedding.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's Jane Westerling that was providing the comfort. But by the way, I should have asked this: do you think she was put up to sleeping with him then?
Yeah.
Okay. Slayer throat.
Yeah. So we see an array of wonderful things in this chapter. We see the giants on mammoths, hundreds of them, apparently, like hundreds of them. Like he's lost count how many, and the story of Tormund, the giant's babe, or the giant's bane.
Yeah.
Now, there's all sorts of theories, aren't there, about Tormund and one of the Mormon ladies being a bear, and he actually isn't that. Yeah, the story of him falling for a girl in this chapter. Who is it? This chapter that rips him to shreds. I'm getting confused. Sorry.
The story of the girl that ripped him to shreds. Yeah, I think he mentions that about the bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, then he goes off and has babies with her.
Well, he sleeps with a. This is sorry, I'm confused now, because there's the story about him and the bear, the actual bear, that he climbs inside her and then wakes up, and the bear apparently wakes up even though he's cut her open, and he's now the giant's baby. But then there's this other story of I haven't made any notes in it, but I'm sure it was in this chapter where he talks about meeting a girl who's like wrapped up in fur, and she's like, he spends a night with her, but he wakes up and he's got cuts all over him, and it's like, was that a Mormon woman?
Oh, I don't know if it's in this chapter. I don't.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was in the. Oh, here it is.
Is it?
He found a bald bear in the woods who cut him to shreds, and I've put, is it a bear of Bear Island?
Ah, sorry. Oh,
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I can't read my own notes.
So he climbs into the belly of a giant, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And then gets her. Oh, thank you very much. I've been bought coffee. The book you gave me.
Oh, fab.
That's the hand.
So yes, we've got. I can't make any sense of my notes, Kat, so I'm going to have to probably refer to you on this chapter.
So yeah, I had the question about Mormont as well. I think there's probably something to that. I was interested in talking about the castration of the Night's Watch, and it made me wonder at one stage, was there? It's obviously an urban, not an urban, a wildling myth, but it's it made me wonder.
Are they all made into eunuchs when they?
Yeah, was there talk of making them more unsullied, like when they first? And why not?
Yeah,
Why not do that?
Wow, you're in a real mood tonight, aren't you?
Why not?
Why not just castrate them as part of the vows?
No, but I obviously don't.
I lost my sword in
I
the
wonder,
night.
was there ever a conversation though that maybe, like, maybe we should have more Unsullied, like, kind of.
Yeah.
Then they're Unsullied are slaves, I suppose. The Night's Watch, for the most part, still have to act for. They have an oath, but they're still acting under free will, I guess. But yeah, no, it's just interesting that talk of the castration. I wonder, like, obviously that kind of rumor is probably just any kind of hyperbole goes around. But I wonder, is there anything to that? Was there a story that started that idea?
I do like wildling legends and myths.
I love it. The singing is amazing.
Yeah.
I loved the singing, and Ygritte, telling him that he knows nothing, and that there's obviously a lot of meaning in these songs. But it's a whole culture that, I mean, we've heard of singers and we've seen singers before, but I've never got this kind of rousing sense of a shared communal culture.
It's like joining in a sing-song. Yeah.
You say, poor Mr. Cronall. Just I'm not going to take a knife to him. He got me coffee. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask you, this is the first time we've heard Kissed by Fire, right?
Yes.
Ygritte. So is there some meaning to that? Is there someone we should be watching out for from history that has, like, that red-haired gene has come from, or what kind of meaning do you think we should be taking from that? Because it's interesting in our own culture at this time, in the Middle Ages, if you like, redhead would have meant you're going to the devil, which is where I'm going, guys, after tonight. So but for the wildlings, it's a lucky. It's a really lucky thing. So I just wondered.
It sounds, I don't know, it sounds a bit like R'hllor-ish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kissed by Fire.
Yeah, it does actually.
Like some sort of ritual that imbues you with good luck.
I wonder, do people who are kissed by fire get whited? Or can they not be whited or something? That'd be fun.
Oh, yeah.
No red-headed whites. And then the other thing is Orell's attack.
Yes.
So on the surface, it looks like it's because Ygritte is getting really close to Jon. But it's, for me, I think maybe Mance sent Orell to attack him. That Mance is really angry because Orell has been flying ahead and seen the fist, and that's why he's attacking Jon. It's not really about Ygritte.
Orell's dead, isn't he, at this point?
Yeah.
So this is about something of the man, the spirit of the man. So basically, Orell is having his second life inside the bird.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been Mance.
It's just I don't know if I'm getting confused with the show now, where that character or the character that's supposed to be him. No, that's not him at all, is it? Orell, it was played by the guy from The Office.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's in love with Ygritte.
Mackenzie.
Yeah,
something.
that's it. Yeah. He's in love with Ygritte in the show, or it's very obvious that he is.
Yeah.
But here, this time when I read it, I thought, oh, he's seen what happened at the Fist, and that's why he's attacking Jon. That potentially either he's just taken upon himself, or Mance has sent him to attack Jon, to kind of rattle Jon before he comes, and Mance might actually get the truth from him this time. I don't know, but and I thought it was interesting that Jon, so Robb breaks a pact with the Freys by marrying a girl, and Jon has to break his pact with the Night's Watch by sleeping with Ygritte. I just thought that was
to stay undercover reliably.
Yeah. And also I do like how it's matched with the cat chapter.
It's just that you're.
I like that it's matched with the cat chapter in that Mance kind of unites people. That, like, John comments on the fact that Mance unites people. That's why he's such a good leader. But Rob is dividing people. That's why he's such a bad leader. He's just driving more division more than anything else. And it's just interesting, you know, Mance is enemy number one, and yet he's proven to be a better leader. Although it is, John does talk about killing Mance and then it'll be all over, but he doesn't go that far. So that was kind of interesting. He says as well that he's grown to like the wildlings. You know, they've accepted him, but he'd happily kill them all, if it meant saving Winterfell. And I just wonder, will it ever come to that, or in fact will he save the wildlings over Winterfell at some stage?
There's a couple of lines in this that I think link to that possibility. Like there's this whole thing that I'm absolutely fascinated to find out more about ice magic and what ice magic can do, and we know less about that than we do about fire magic. And when Ygritte says to Jon, "A little ice won't kill you," when he's thinking about like getting naked and washing himself in the lake, in the river, and she's saying a little ice won't kill you, and it's like, it just, things like that just remind me of like ice magic, and whether or not he will be able to control it maybe in the future. Or I think he's intrinsically linked to the North and old magic, Jon. It's just a sense that I get. So yeah, possibly. I think this is a fascinating chapter when you're looking at the culture, though, and but there's this thing about the link between Jon and his vows and Rob and his vows, and it just feels like Jon is really wrestling with this concept of a free man and an honor and dishonor, and what is honor and what is shame and what is, I mean, I know that it's all mixed up in his head with this kind of growing attraction to Ygritte, but at the same time he's struggling with it. He's struggling to kind of, he seems to like this culture, but at the same time it's so alien to him that it's really forcing him to think about, well, what is honor and what is shame, and the idea that, I mean, what's happening is he's completely being confronted with all his previous prejudices about what the wildlings are like, and he's beginning to see and actually can't find some sort of camaraderie with them and appreciation for them. So it's messing with his head about what's right and what's wrong. But I think you're right, when he thinks about his vows and he thinks about defending the wall against this power, whatever this power is that Mance is looking for, that's where he feels that his allegiances lay, when he thinks about the people that are at Winterfell. But it's tough for him. He has to keep reminding himself of this, and it's difficult when he's in front of Mance and Mance is asking him all these like questions about what happened here and what is this about and why did you lie to me. It's difficult,
and it's intoxicating as well, that culture, because it's intoxicating for the readers to find ourselves with a culture where the leader is so accessible to anybody. Like, if anyone wants to talk to Mance, they can just go up and talk to him. Like, that isn't the case with, Drogo. It's not the case with, Joffrey. It's not the case with Rob. Like it's not even the case with your liege lord. You can't just rock up and say, hey, can I have a chat, or how's it going? But Mance is so accessible, and that's quite intoxicating, and everybody is equal. The women are equal. They've got this, they really have a laugh. Anyone is open to the banter and the insults of the group, and nobody is made, no, they don't really belittle people. like they make fun and they have, you know, banter, but there doesn't seem to be the same amount of, like, people are really dehumanized in other sections of society, especially if you're me and somebody else is a Westerner. But people are dehumanized in outside of this, and even the giants, like Ygritte is really empathizing with giants. Like that's very unusual for Westeros.
Yeah.
You don't see that. You don't see that with the people from the next village, let alone, you know, people that are seen as other.
It's very territorial, isn't it?
Yeah. Like I would love to have seen Tyrion in this situation. Tyrion would have been all over it. He would have loved this because I think this is exactly the kind of word Tyrion would have probably really liked, apart from the cold. But just that kind of the camaraderie, the fact that it doesn't matter what you look like.
The rules are different, completely.
Different.
Yeah.
And Tyrion would have also welcomed, you know, the likes of Ygritte. And also, like, Ygritte is not pretty, but John is really fallen for her, and it's very sweet. It's very real. I feel, you know, her teeth looks a bit less yellow, and you know, everything is kind of
He's looking more at the color of her eyes rather than the fact that they're wide apart. Just going back to the giants and the song that they were all.
Back to them myself.
The Last of the Giants, and I was just listening to the lyrics of the song. Stolen my forest, rivers and hills, built a great wall. Da, 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 da. And it sounds like the giants are singing about, so it's kind of like, who's done this to them, who's done this to the giants. And when they talked about building, they so it's like, who is they in the song? And I think it's the small folk. It's just not normal human beings, but it's not. So I mean, when it comes to the myths and the legends about who built the wall, like who physically, you know, built it. And I think this song has clues in it of who built the wall. To me, it just sounds like small folk in the north built the wall. Now, to a giant, I suppose everyone is just small folk. So, you know, but it seems like it was humans who built the wall rather than some magical, you know, some magical entity.
It does beg the question, how were the resources of Westeros not stripped by this population? It must be like, they must be like pandas. They must not mate that easily. Like there must be a lot. There must be great difficulty in mating or something, because their numbers, and I know we kind of get glimpses into that later with the women are very aggressive. The female of the giants are very, very aggressive, but it does make me wonder, you know, how there must be great difficulties in them developing their numbers, even though there are hundreds of them, right? Hundreds of them. The thing I wanted to go back to is the description of them. Their legs were shorter than their arms, but very thick. They wore no boots at all. Their feet were broad, splayed things, hard and horny and black. And then later it says their faces were squashed and brutal. Rats' eyes, no larger than beads, were almost lost within folds of horny flesh. So this kind of word horny, which I kind of feel like is really hard or calloused.
Yeah.
But it also made me think of stone men. And I wonder, is there some connection there? If there was interbreeding between giants and humans, is there some connection with that disease there? So it just made me think of that.
I definitely think that grayscale and stone men, that kind of, it's some sort of genetic mutation that links to breeding. I'm sure of it.
And we've talked about that maybe being the dragons, but I forgot about that. The giants actually have that in their skin, that horniness, which could be
thick skin.
Yeah. Which could be grayscale.
There's just one more thing that I wanted to mention in this chapter in Tormund's dialogue, where he's just kind of outlining to Jon exactly what the culture is like and relationships between men and women, and how it's very different about the bedding and the wedding and that kind of thing. And when he's talking about, when Jon's kind of like, well, I might get her pregnant if that happens, she might end up having a bastard. And Tormund's like, well, what's wrong with, you're a bastard, and bastards are no weaker than other men. And there's that conversation, but hidden in that dialogue is this line where Tormund says, you don't come into it as a man. You don't come into it. Once you've planted the seed, then things like decisions are taken out of your hands. Now he's relating that to, if you get Ygritte pregnant, it'll be up to her what she wants to do. You don't come into it. You've planted the seed. That's it. It's, these are the rules. You do not come into it once the seed is planted. And it just made me think again of, because it's in that part where he's talking about must every man in the South marry and, marry every girl that he beds. And it's like, just going back to what you were saying before about Jane Westerling, and is she pregnant? At what point was she pregnant? And does Robb know at this point that she is pregnant? That once the seed is planted, Robb wouldn't have had any decisions in it, and it would have been, I can just imagine a conversation or a order from Tywin where he says, she needs to marry him and get pregnant, because that will fuck everything up for the young wolf, and we win without probably even having to, because there is a thing with Tywin about, as brutal as the Red Wedding was, when you think about numbers, it's not as brutal as it it was kind of, the horror was contained to fewer numbers than it need be. So if you I don't know, it's interesting to think about, again, the mirroring between Jon and Robb and their experiences of, and
and even if Robb hadn't married her, I mean, that's his reputation in Westeros, severely damaged by that, because that's why Robert Baratheon claims Edric Storm as his own, because it was a highborn lady that he knocked up, so he can't. Hey P Sand, how are you? It's, and I do feel sorry for Jane, for sure. I mean, she was put in a terrible position there, and she doesn't have the same, to have to give up your virginity to this strange Northman who's crying over his brothers. I'm sure that was really romantic.
Sorry, I just have to let this ridiculous cat out. I won't be a minute. I can still hear you.
Yeah, the other thing I wrote down was from a bad Stark leader to a good Stark leader, potentially in Mance if he is a Stark.
Yeah.
And also Ygritte in this chapter. Have you seen Wedding Crashers, the movie?
No.
There's Isla Fisher, who's a redheaded Australian actress. She plays this, they call her the stage 5 clinger. Like, as soon as you sleep with her, give her any bit of attention, she's there all the time. And this guy has a one night stand with her, and she says, "I love you, and we're going to have babies." And I just kept thinking of that when they were talking about Ygritte, just siding up to Jon at night, and it didn't matter how far he slept away from the fire. I was like, stage 5 clinger.
Didn't say when it was going to happen, but it will happen.
It is funny because if a man did that, we'd go creepy, but it's because it's a girl. It's like, oh, okay. But it is like this really young kind of, how old is Jon now? 15, 16? 16?
Yeah, 16.
And he's like, this girl is just constantly on his heels. Wow. He is persistent. But I doubt Jane was like that with Robb. But it's hard. It isn't easy for teenagers to put up their guard against that kind of thing, I guess. But that's it for this chapter for me.
Yeah.
Definitely my favorite chapter this week, and probably my second favorite chapter is probably this Sansa chapter. I think I really like this Sansa chapter actually. I was trying to think, is it the Arya chapter, the Sansa chapter? But I think this Sansa chapter is also very upbeat and lures you into this false sense of security.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, it was quite a short chapter.
Very short chapter. Yeah. Like half the length of the usual chapters.
Is it true? Is the true king in the north Robb Stark being disrespected?
Yeah.
Great, so
Yeah,
great,
unfortunately.
so. Yeah. We just read the chapter where he shows up with the Westerlings.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, so Sansa, so Sansa has found a new BFF in
Yeah.
Marjorie Tyrell.
Mhm.
My first question for you: how much does Marjorie know about the plan? Because Sansa instantly feels this overwhelming sense of guilt and says, "Are you sure you want to marry Joffrey? I mean, he's horrible. You will never get a moment's peace, blah, blah, blah." And Marjorie said, "It's fine. Daddy won't let anything happen."
Yeah.
And really, how confident are you?
I'm not sure that Marjorie knows the intricate details of what's going to happen, but I think she's probably just reassured by her grandmother that, don't worry, I will not allow you to be mistreated, or I will not allow any man, Joffrey or anyone, to treat you in a cruel, horrible way. So I think she's just relying on that her family will take care of her. I mean, she talks about Loras, doesn't she? Loras will protect her against anything that Joff can levy at her. But I mean, I think she's just thinking her family will protect her. I don't think, I mean, it could be that Marjorie knows. Somebody has said to her, Olenna has sat down and said, right, you're up, Marjorie. This is what's going to be happening next. You're going to marry Joffrey, but it will be, you won't even have time to bed you, because he's going to be dispatched straight away, and you'll be marrying Tommen, who's soft and pliable and who we can manipulate and mold. That's the plan. Don't worry about anything. Off you go. So it could have been either.
So we're definitely on the Olenna is driving all of this.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because I know it's just I'm never quite sure how much is it Olenna and how much is it Mace. I know Mace is hugely ambitious as well. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it is Olenna for the most part, but I feel like Mace has a lot to do with it, especially later. But yeah, and Sansa's she starts kind of laughing at the girls with all their foolish ideas, and by
Silly
the
little
end of this
girls.
chapter,
Yeah.
she's the one with all these foolish notions, romantic notions about Willis and all that kind of thing. And she is fitted for a dress. And we know what the dress is.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know what the dress is. And the dressmaker is actually giving her quite a few clues as to, oh no, this isn't for the wedding. You'll be using it before that. And oh wow, you've got a lovely bosom, and oh, it's a bit nicer than Queen Cersei's. And in other words, Sansa is quite a catch.
Yeah.
Particularly, as good looking as Marjorie, if not more good looking than Marjorie, and definitely more beautiful than Cersei at this stage. I mean, Sansa says that she was being checked out by the stable boy and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Sansa doesn't really know yet. She will find out. I think Elaine definitely knows what kind of powers she has as a woman. Right now, Sansa doesn't realize. And maybe this woman making her dress is thinking, wow, they're giving her to Tyrion Lannister. Wow.
Yeah.
And interesting that they're putting all these highborn ladies on hold. And so my big question here is it ends up with Sansa dreaming about Willis, and it might be nice, and he's in my lap and all that kind of thing. P. San says Mace definitely knows people underestimate him, but he plays the Gale. He definitely knows people underestimate him, but he plays the game very well.
Well, I mean, in the TV show, he came across as just a complete buffoon.
Yeah.
And I think that's a caricature, or maybe it is. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and he's just presenting himself as he doesn't really know what he's doing. But traditionally, that's the house, isn't it? He's grasping. He's grasping at this. They've always been what's the stewards to the royal family, and he wants more.
P-Sand also says Sansa's coming into her beauty at this stage. She's still young. Yeah, she's still young, but she's grown 3 inches in a year.
Yes,
quite a lot. So the other thing I had, so she also sends Dantas on his bike, won't see him in the Godswood anymore. She's happy enough to marry Willis. So here's my thing. There's a plan here with Littlefinger that the Tyrells, they seem to be in contact with Littlefinger, right? Is Littlefinger the one that tells Tywin about their plan to marry Sansa to Willis? Because that's the part of the plan that doesn't suit Littlefinger.
Yes. Well, I think the big thing here is Sansa's being used as leverage between the Tyrells, with the Lannisters, holding a hostage, and with Littlefinger. Everyone wants a piece of Sansa, and Dantas, quite rightly, in his drunken stupor falling around the Godswood, tells her it's because of your claim.
Yeah.
And she has to actually think about that. Oh shit, yeah, I am actually the eldest child. I mean, the fact that she's a woman, but I mean, she's still got a good claim.
We never had that. I know I asked you this before, but we never had that moment where she found out about Bran and Rickon. We never saw that from her point of view.
No, I don't think we did we? We definitely did with Arya, because she was the cupbearer. Yeah.
We never got that through Sansa, which I think is more revealing, because I wonder what her reaction would have been to that. Because when she says that, I was like, because I remember saying it to you before, does she know about Bran and Rickon?
Yeah, I don't think she does directly. I mean, you know that she knows later on. She refers to it,
but she didn't find out in Clash.
No.
I know Tyrion finds out, but we never see Sansa finding out.
No, I don't think we do.
Yeah,
no.
I wonder, how was that told to her? Was that something that Joffrey kind of lorded over her, or it would have been interesting to see that, because I just don't know how that went. But anyway, or was it something that Tywin just read out as something that happened or whatever? But yeah, so Littlefinger obviously goes to Tywin with this piece of the plan to say, you know, this is the move, so that he can take Sansa.
So that he can take Sansa, but then that backfires on him, because Tywin's like, right, this is how we keep her here. This is how we use Sansa.
Exactly. But he takes her anyway.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, because later, then they offer Cersei to Willis, or Willis to Cersei. Is that right? Not Loras. It's Loras in the show.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it's Willis in the book. Because Willis is kind of savvy later on, from what I remember. He's not like he seems to be quite a decent lord, but they want Marcella later on, and it's all about like trying to get the most pliable match.
Yeah.
For them. Like, I mean, the reason they put Marjorie into that position and not Loras is because, well, Marjorie is smart, and they know exactly that Marjorie is going to play the game properly, whereas Loras is a bit of a romantic. So he's maybe not necessarily going to play the game properly. But yeah, it was just something that you know, obviously Sansa doesn't think about it, but it's very clear what they're doing, the Tyrells. They're just, because either way, regardless of who wins in the end, they get either the North or they get Westeros.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they get both if they want. So yeah, it's clever and it's not going to work.
I have to say in this chapter for the Sansa proponents that there does seem to be something about Sansa when she thinks about the Hound, and she thinks about kissing him, which could be like, ooh, you
Who
know,
hasn't?
yeah. But also, so she thinks about kissing him, and it's like, but did you, or was it? So it's all a bit vague. But whenever she thinks about the Hound, it seems to pull her out of that. Like, she immediately then observes everyone around her and goes, "Oh my God, you're all just silly little children." And I do think that the Hound's relationship, personally, I think the Hound's relationship with Sansa is more of he's a human replacement for Lady and a kind of protector figure, but or maybe like a mentor kind of thing. They've that sort of relationship. But when she thinks of him, it does seem to kind of trigger this, like, yeah, grow up, Sansa, you know. But then at the very end, and I know LaDonna has mentioned this before, she thinks about Willis and having sons and marrying him and having this life in Highgarden, and she thinks about having sons, and she also thinks about puppies in her lap, which is, you know, the Hound, having children with the Hound. So it's, you know, I can see where that comes from. But personally, I think that he's more of her protector, and he kind of reminds her, even just the memory of him reminds her, just grow up, Sansa, you know, get a grip, get real, because that's kind of what he was saying to her when he ever had conversations with her before he left.
I actually, reading Rob's chapter in particular, as wonderful as the direwolves are, and I love the direwolves, I wonder if it was better for Sansa not to have Lady at some stages while she's in King's Landing. Now, not that I wouldn't want Lady around, but I wonder, is it allowing her, will it allow her to get to the end, to survive the end game? In a way that she has to abandon that kind of Stark part of her identity. Like the puppies for me symbolize new beginnings for her, and it's very different to the mud dream that we get with Arya in this chapter, where all the wolves are gaunt and kind of, you know, kind of growling at her almost. And you know, obviously I want the direwolves around as much as possible, but I do wonder if Sansa would be in this position if the direwolf was still alive. I wonder, would she have survived?
Well, yeah, she may have just been more reliant on her. You know, she's kind of got to come into her own at this point, and these little things now and again remind her of that, like when she thinks of the Hound. But I think you're right. I think, you know, she's going to have to prove that she can kind of do this and make things, you know, make it on her own, basically.
And also, we don't know how the direwolves are being manipulated. And we don't know what kind of forces are manipulating them either. So she does have to be way more savvy, I think, like Arya. More, they have to kind of work on instinct a lot more and find their own identity separate to the Stark identity. Which I'm not sure if, you know, it's necessarily always a bad thing to kind of abandon your Starkness for a little while. I don't know. That's just, I mean, just looking at Mance, looking at Jon, there's a lot of things that are good about being a Stark, but there's a lot of things that kind of hold you back as well. Definitely her saying to Marjorie, Joffrey's a bad egg, and I really don't think you should marry him. That's a Stark thing to do. That's a very dangerous Stark thing to do, because she doesn't know if Marjorie's going to go, well, fuck you. That's going to be the king. That's blah, blah, blah. You don't, like, you just don't know how that's going to work. Like, So, yeah, it is one of those things.
Keep your mouth shut, Sansa. You're going to ruin everything.
It's like, oh, don't say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the puppies thing. I think I know there are people out there that ship a stanza. Have you heard the stanza shipping?
Yeah.
So that's Stannis and Sansa. Now,
Yeah.
gross. But I do think Sansa will marry someone older. I don't
Right.
think she'll get the young, beautiful kind of knight.
Mm.
She may end up marrying Willis. She may end up with Willis.
Yeah.
It might come true that
Mhm.
Willis thing. I don't know, but Ian says Joffrey is an E. coli egg. Yeah, he's the ultimate bad egg. He's like Veruca. Is it Veruca salt that goes down the egg chute? Yeah, the ultimate bad egg. Oh my God, Sansa is something the world did not need. Yeah, I know, but you see, I swear, please, Sand, you're a Sansa fan. I know,
Yeah.
Sansa fan, not Sansa fan. But I know you've seen that theory before. But yeah, there's people out there that ship that. I don't understand that at all. But I do think Sansa will end up in a marriage more like Kat and Ned's,
Yeah.
where it'll be,
Respectful, political, possibly.
yes,
You know.
somebody who's a bit older. And if she is lucky enough to marry for love, it might be somebody who's a bit gruff, but somebody who'll look after her, I think. But yeah, so that's it for Sansa.
Yes. So
And I like that chapter, but that's the last time she'll be happy.
Yes. Yeah. Looking forward to wearing a new dress.
A happy chapter after this.
No.
And I do feel a bit sorry for Dantas at this stage.
Yeah.
A little bit sorry for him.
Another Patsy.
Yeah. And all right, so we move on to Arya 3. We didn't talk that much about Arya 2 because most of what happens to Arya is in Arya 3, to be fair. It starts off on a sad note. No more hot pie.
Yeah.
He stayed to show husband how to make bread. And yeah.
She says she'll come back after the war, and I know in the TV show that you get that. You get her running into hot pie again before she runs into Nymeria again. And that's actually quite sweet, that scene in the TV show. But I wonder in the books if she will ever run into hot pie again. I mean, she says, I'll come back.
Written down as well. Yeah. I wonder what is the significance of that as well, because hot pie. How far are they from Harrenhal at this stage? They're not a huge distance away, are they?
No, they're in the vicinity still, I think. Yeah.
Because right now, going into the books, I'm not sure if it's a theory or if it's a fact. I believe it's a fact. I've read so many theories now at this stage. But Littlefinger is stockpiling grain at Harrenhal, right? So just because hot pie is known, he's got a lot of association with bread and things like that. I just wonder, will he get caught up in some sort of fray there where the people are going to revolt? Because it looks like Littlefinger is going to try and starve people out, or at least be in a position where he's controlling the food so that people don't have to come to him for food. So I don't know, there's something about hot pie that I feel like he's been built up as a bit of a craven to now, but I think he could come back and be a bit of a hero.
Have a heroic moment.
I think so.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. In my head, in my fan fiction, that's what's happening.
So
it's not all violent.
In this chapter, you see Arya having a conversation with Harwin. She tells him pretty much everything that's happened to her so far, apart from the real darker stuff, like running into Jaqen and Rorge and Biter and killing somebody. You know, she feels that would be a step too far to reveal all of that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the chapter, she kind of kicks herself, thinking, I should have just stayed in disguise. None of this would have happened to me. It's by revealing who I am that I've got myself into that. It's preposterous, really, when you think about it. It's just her this is the way she's thinking, that this is what's happened to me, I shouldn't do, you know, so she's starting to make rules for herself. I should never have done that. Okay, lesson learned. I won't be doing that again. And that's, I suppose, she goes deeper undercover, and it's kind of, you know, she's not going to be in the habit of just kind of announcing to people, do you know who I am? I'm Arya Stark of Winterfell.
But this is a kid that has like really severe PTSD. I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as she hears the word captive, she's gone.
Yeah.
She just thinks, and like, I mean, who can blame her? I mean, the things she's seen at Harrenhal are just horrific. I mean, it was way more traumatizing than what she saw, than seeing her own father's head cut off. It's really traumatizing what happened to her, and it makes me wonder that thing with Harwin. It just, like, his loyalty is supposed to be to Starks, and in her mind, that's the way it is. And now he's suddenly not that way inclined, and she can't make sense. Like, her whole world order is gone. The thing that she knew is just completely fallen apart. And of course, as a child, she's going to turn that inward. I'm to blame for this. This isn't him being a dick. This is me. I'm to blame for. That's what children do.
Yes.
I was listening to Ricky Gervais's latest podcast, and the Robin Ince, the comedian, was on, the guy from Infinite Monkey Cage. And when he was 3 years old, he was in a severe car accident with his mother, and his mother was in a coma. And even at 3 years old, he can remember through most of his formative childhood years blaming himself for the accident. And like, you would never think that a 3-year-old would do that.
No.
And yet, like, when you see it then with Arya, it's not really that surprising. Like, George is right. That's what children do. Children of divorced parents often do that. They often blame themselves for the things that happen, because they only know of their worldview. They don't. They can't. Really
If something's gone wrong,
it
must be because I've done something wrong. Yeah.
They can't really empathize. She can't really empathize with Harwin and the King's Men and their greater cause.
No.
To kind of say, you know what, we're fighting for the small folk now. I mean, she has been kind of disguising herself as a member of the small folk, but she's not really.
No.
She is a lady.
She's a highborn captive.
She is highborn. Yeah. She was raised that way, and you know, it foreshadows that Northmen will turn on the Starks if they have to. And it's a nice kind of, you know, coming off the Sansa, Jon, and Cat chapter in particular. You know, people will turn on them if they have to. And it's a big red flag for the reader, I think.
I thought it was interesting when Harwin was kind of filling in some of the gaps for Arya as well, and talking about when they were sent out, and they, you know, the King's Men, but they're ultimately now fighting for the King's people. So they became the outlaws, even though they were supposed to be on a mission to capture some outlaws. And he explains that it was all a trap, and that Tywin was hoping to force Ned west, like basically to join the fighting, but he couldn't because of his leg. So it's quite ironic, really, that actually, although we know what happened to Ned, Jaime at that point, Jaime kind of saved Ned from heading off into this trap, into this battle, by having that scuffle with him in King's Landing, and by Ned breaking his leg at the, you know, it just all, it's kind of like Tywin's children can't stop backfire, his plans just constantly backfiring because of Cersei and Jaime, and they don't realize that they're doing it. Tywin must just be like, Jesus, you know, they just keep messing up all my plans. But yeah, it just that made me laugh, that ultimately Jaime saved Ned from, you know, running off into this trap that was set by Tywin.
It's so funny that you say that, because again, I found myself thinking with this group of people, this is a group that Tyrion would like to hang out with, I think. And yeah, it like, you know, again, Jaime did mess that one up on him, and Tyrion you feel like Tyrion wouldn't have. But then, you know, how realistic is it that they're working for the small folk? I mean, are they really the Robin Hoods of Westeros? I really want more from these guys. I want to know more about them. When it's so heartbreaking when she sets off to escape, and she really feels like, I'll get a little boat, I'll get hot pie, and blah blah. You know, we'll do it, and it's not going to happen. Like you're 9. She's 9 now, 10. It's not going to happen. And it's just this is the breaking of Arya. I'm never ever going to trust anyone ever again.
No.
If Harwin can do this to me, and I think Harwin knows that, and that's that. You know, I think that's you know, I think he is still a Stark deep down, but you know, it's, at the end of the day, it's every man for himself right now, and yeah, it's a tough one for Arya. I'm interested in her mud dream. This dream of her being caught in the mud.
Yeah, so she has dreams of Winterfell and wolves, and it's quite vicious. It's like, well, it's basically a nightmare, isn't it? Which, as you say, is complete opposite to Sansa falling asleep and daydreaming about puppies in her lap. It's just this dark path, I think, that Arya is going deeper and deeper and deeper. At the beginning of this chapter, we're going the wrong way, we're lost, and that just sets up what's going to be Arya's story arc. She's kind of seems to be always going the wrong way and a bit lost. Yeah, what did you get out of that, stuck in the mud?
So my thing was with the wolves, the gaunt wolves, and I don't know what they represent, so I made a list. It's either hungry Starks, like Starks are kind of hungry, they're being starved out in different ways, okay, or it's hungry direwolves, so direwolves that are being kept from their Stark children, if you like. So, you know, Lady from Sansa, obviously, Nymeria from Arya, and Greywind from Robb. And maybe the wolves represent the North, that the North is hungry for a Stark to come back.
Yeah, or the old kings of winter.
Because there's no Stark in Winterfell right now. Or is it death? Is it dead Starks? Is it the ghosts of dead Starks? Because you know, we have that image way back when with Jon imagining Arya frozen with the needle. So that was the darker one. Is it dead Starks, kind of the gaunt, the ghosts at Winterfell in the crypts, you know, waiting for Arya to come back? So that was what I got from it. I'm just it's one of her darker dreams to this point, and very very lucid and very detached from Nymeria. It's very much her caught in this situation, and it's she's not in a good place, Arya, and it's just such a contrast with Sansa. Although Sansa will get caught in the mud herself soon.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, that's all I have going into Sam 1, our first Sam chapter.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So we've got, is it another 6 chapters?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
6.
Sam 1 to Dany 2.
Great.
And that's 18 to 23. So that's next Friday. So it's Friday night, and it's at 10 p.m. UK time. The link is in the description box below, so you can go and click it and hit the notification. It'll tell you when we go live. And yeah, and all the playlists are down there as well. Thanks, Claire, for that suggestion. Also, Clare and AU are always linked down below. So yeah, you can find them there too. And yeah, so it's chapters 18 to 23. I'm really looking forward to Dany too. We haven't seen Dany in a while, so I'm looking forward to another Dany chapter as well.
Good. Yeah. I would just to let you know, I will literally have just got off a train coming home.
So it might be a
from
bit
London.
after 10.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I need to get into the door and just literally set up. It probably will be about 10 once we've had 10 minutes to just kind of catch up.
That's fine.
But just in case I'm just not, hopefully I'll be with it and I will have read the chapters, but it might be a fairly short podcast next week.
Yeah, because I am flying to Japan the following morning.
Yeah. Wow, we sound like real high flyers, don't we?
Totally just. Yeah. Yeah, so it's actually good that it's later for me because I'm hoping it'll kind of tire me out a bit because I can never sleep on plane.
No, I'm terrible. I always plan to, but I never do.
Yeah. At AU, I will be nice to the hand. I'm wondering, can we expect Westworld streams from you soon? I think is it back already, AU, or is it starting tonight? I am totally disconnected from everything. So I made the mistake of watching a few Game of Thrones videos this week, and now my all the recommendations are spoilery stuff. I'm going mad. So Planes, Trains and Dragons. P-San says, hope to make Friday's stream. Always some great book chat. Thanks, P-San. And tonight is Westworld Season 2 premiere. Thank you so much. AU, will you be back for this stream, for your live streams? That's what I want to know. If you haven't checked out AU's channel, please go and check it out. 4.5 hours from now. Excellent. I'm going to watch it before I go to work tomorrow.
And Victoria, hi, you've just arrived just as we're saying goodbye to everyone. But we're back on Friday with another 6 chapters. Yeah.
Yes, and I think they'll be okay. We'll probably talk more about Sam than anything else. So yeah. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined us. Thank you, Claire, for making it again, and thanks for rushing in from the train. If she's a few minutes late, let her have a cup of tea and all that now on Friday. So we'll give you good. I'll give you good notice on Instagram and stuff. So AU will be back with Westworld streams. Yes. So
excellent.
Please go and check out AU's channel if you're a fan of Westworld, and just check it out anyway if you're a fan of Game of Thrones and Sound of Fire. So thanks everybody. Have a great week, and I will talk to you all again soon.
Bye.